It is 03:17 in the morning when the first explosions are heard. Sirens scream across the Polish port city of Rzeszów, NATO's lifeline for Ukraine. Dozens of trucks, loaded with ammunition, fuel, and weapons, sit waiting in neat rows near the airfield. Above them, streaks of light carve through the night sky. Russia has crossed a line. Not with rhetoric, not with threats, but with fire. A swarm of Shahed drones and cruise missiles arcs westward, not toward Ukraine, but into NATO territory. Their target is clear: choke the artery that keeps Kyiv alive. Moments later, the thunder of jet engines tears the silence. Dutch F-16s scramble, Polish interceptors join them, and NATO's air defenses switch from standby to war. The question is no longer if Article 5 is tested, but whether NATO dares to admit it has already been crossed. The night sky over southeastern Poland is supposed to be quiet. For months, the Rzeszów airbase has operated as NATO's invisible heart, the hub where Western weapons and supplies flow into Ukraine. Officially, it is logistics. In reality, it is a lifeline. Every missile fired by Ukrainian artillery, every HIMARS rocket, every Javelin tube passes through this choke point. The Russians know it, and tonight they choose to act. At 03:12, NATO radar stations detect anomalies, a cluster of unidentified objects rising from southern Belarus heading west. The data is confusing. Some are low and slow, others high and fast. A mixed package. Shahed 136 drones, launched in waves, escorted by Kalibr cruise missiles streaking at treetop level. Russia has combined swarm tactics with precision strikes, gambling that NATO's defenses will be overwhelmed. The alarm spreads quickly. In Warsaw, phones ring in the middle of the night. In Brussels, encrypted channels light up with urgent messages. Possible violation of NATO airspace, tracking 60+ inbound. But for the soldiers at Rzeszów, there is no time for politics. They hear the sirens, see the glow on the horizon, and know what's coming. At 03:17, the first wave arrives. A Shahed drone, its engine buzzing like an angry chainsaw, dives toward the perimeter fence. Anti-aircraft guns on the ground bark to life. Tracer rounds climb into the sky, slicing red arcs across the dark. The drone bursts into flame, shattering against the tarmac in a spray of debris. Cheers erupt, but only for a second, because behind it come dozens more. Polish interceptors scramble, F-16s rising into the night, afterburners lighting up the runway. Dutch jets, stationed nearby, join them within minutes. But the sheer number of targets turns the battle into chaos. Every radar screen glows red with incoming blips. Pilots scream for vectors, gunners fire blindly at shapes in the dark, and commanders struggle to prioritize. Do they defend the trucks, the fuel depots, the runway? The airspace above them is a storm. At 03:22, a Kalibr missile finds its mark. The blast rips through a warehouse filled with ammunition crates, setting off a secondary chain reaction. Fireballs climb into the night, windows shatter across the airbase, and a column of smoke rises like a signal of war. For the first time since World War II, explosions tear across Polish soil from a direct attack by Russia. Civilians shelter in basements, children cry, and emergency crews race into the inferno. Above them, NATO jets and drones battle to claw the sky back from a relentless wave. And in Moscow, the Kremlin watches carefully. They know what they have done. The question is, will NATO call it war? At 03:25 hours, the sky above southeastern Poland is no longer night. It is war. Searchlights rake the clouds, tracers glow like fireflies, and the thunder of jet engines shakes the ground. What was moments ago a quiet logistics hub has become the front line of a conflict NATO swore it would never fight directly. From the control tower, operators watch radar screens bloom with hostile contacts. More than 50 drones, 20 cruise missiles, and perhaps more still hidden behind them. Too many for any single air defense system to handle. The base commander issues the only order possible: all batteries, free fire. Patriot launchers open up first. The roar is deafening as interceptors streak into the sky, their contrails cutting through the smoke. Seconds later, blossoms of fire bloom above Rzeszów as drones disintegrate mid-air. But for every Shahed destroyed, two more slip past, weaving low and fast, their tiny radar signatures nearly invisible. The scramble of NATO jets adds another layer to the chaos. Dutch F-16s climb hard, banking sharply into intercept vectors fed by AWACS overhead. Pilots strain against G-forces, their cockpits glowing red as they lock onto drones with Sidewinder missiles. One pilot fires. The missile streaks forward, colliding with a Shahed and turning it into a ball of burning fragments. Another missile finds a Kalibr, detonating it before it can dive toward the runway. But the air is crowded, almost too crowded. Polish interceptors cross paths with Dutch fighters, tracers from ground guns slash dangerously close to their wings. On radio channels, voices overlap. Target lost, and repeat, lost lock. Missile inbound east quadrant. Ground fire, check your arcs, we're in your line. This is not an organized battle. It is survival. At 0331, another Kalibr slips through. Its seeker locks onto a cluster of fuel trucks at the edge of the airfield. NATO gunners fire desperately, shells walking across the sky, but they are a heartbeat too late. The missile slams into the trucks, detonating a chain of explosions that rip through the convoy. Fireballs rise hundreds of feet high, raining debris across the perimeter. The night is now lit not by searchlights, but by infernos. Yet NATO is not powerless. The fighters press their advantage, adapting to the chaos. Pilots pair off, one tracking, one shooting, thinning the swarm systematically. By 0335, Dutch jets have downed at least 6 drones and 2 missiles. Polish F-16s add 4 more kills. The Patriots continue to roar, launching salvo after salvo. The storm is not beaten, but it is blunted. On the ground, soldiers and fire crews race between craters, dragging wounded to cover. Sirens howl across Rzeszów, broadcasting a truth no one wanted to admit. NATO soil is under attack, not by accident, but by design. For Moscow, the gamble is working. Each explosion is a message, broadcast across the world. Russia can strike NATO directly. For Brussels, Washington, and Warsaw, the dilemma is immediate. Do they treat this as provocation, retaliate openly, or contain it, insisting it is not yet war? But the pilots in the air, the gunners on the ground, the medics hauling wounded from rubble, they are already at war. At 0340, the final wave approaches. Not missiles this time, but drones. Dozens of them, low, erratic, their engines buzzing like angry hornets. They are the killers of opportunity, programmed to hit whatever remains. NATO has minutes, maybe seconds, to stop them. The battle for Rzeszów is not over. It is about to reach its deadliest moment. By 0342, the defenders of Rzeszów are exhausted. Gun barrels glow red, ammunition belts run low, and the acrid taste of smoke hangs heavy over the airbase. The first 2 waves have left scars. A warehouse gone, fuel trucks obliterated, dozens of casualties. But the third wave, the drone swarm, is the most dangerous yet. On radar, the picture is terrifying. More than 20 Shahed drones flying low and scattered, weaving like insects to evade interception. Their tiny signatures flicker in and out, hard to track, harder to kill. Ground operators know the truth. Some of these will get through. The question is only how many. At 0344, the first drone slips past. Its buzzing engine cuts through the chaos as it dives toward the runway. A Polish gunner tracks it, fires, and misses. The drone slams into the tarmac, detonating in a burst of flame that gouges a crater into the surface. Instantly, the main runway is unusable. Jets already airborne cannot land here now. But NATO has prepared for this. Secondary strips exist, hidden and reinforced. The war is not lost. In the skies above, Dutch F-16s turn the tide. Flying in pairs, they work the swarm with ruthless precision. One pilot marks targets with radar lock. The wingman fires sidewinders in quick succession. Explosions ripple across the night as drones vanish one by one. Within minutes, 7 are destroyed. Polish fighters add to the tally, chasing drones that hug tree lines and rivers. Pilots strain their eyes in the dark, catching faint glimmers of engine heat. Each kill is a small victory, but the swarm keeps coming. On the ground, NATO's Patriots fire again, The missiles arc high, diving into clusters of drones, shredding them in midair. But every launch depletes the stockpile. Operators glance nervously at remaining interceptors, calculating how long they can last. At Oro 350, the battle reaches its climax. 4 drones break through the defenses almost simultaneously. One strikes a fuel depot, sending another tower of fire into the night sky. A second crashes into a hangar, collapsing its roof. The third explodes near the perimeter fence, killing guards outright. The fourth, heading for a cluster of HIMARS trucks, is intercepted at the last second by small arms fire, detonating meters short of its target. The cost is staggering. Flames burn uncontrolled across the base. Casualties mount. And yet, amid the chaos, NATO holds. The majority of the swarm is destroyed. The rest scatter, their flight paths erratic, many crashing harmlessly into fields. At 0355, the sky finally begins to clear. The last drones are hunted down, their wreckage littering the countryside. The air raid sirens continue to wail, but the worst is over. Rzeszów still stands, damaged, bleeding, but not destroyed. For the operators in Brussels, the turning point is political as much as military. Reports flow in, 2 warehouses lost, 1 runway cratered, over 20 casualties, but also more than 30 drones shot down, nearly a dozen missiles intercepted. NATO has proven it can withstand a direct strike. Barely. For Moscow, the gamble has failed to deliver a decisive blow. Yes, the base is scarred. Yes, supplies are delayed. But NATO did not break. The swarm did not overwhelm. And now, the question shifts. If Russia can strike NATO soil, can NATO strike back? At Oforswau, as fire crews battle infernos and pilots circle for safer landing strips, orders ripple through Allied command. Reconnaissance drones launch westward. Targeting packages are assembled. Quiet discussions in dark rooms turn toward retaliation. The night has changed everything. The line between provocation and war has blurred. And the decision of whether to cross it is now in NATO's hands. By 0415, the fires at Rzeszów still rage. Emergency crews fight desperately to contain them, their efforts illuminated by the glow of burning fuel and shattered warehouses. But above the chaos, something else is happening. NATO has shifted from defense to offense. In the command centers of Warsaw, Brussels, and Ramstein, the language changes. It is no longer intercept, defend, contain. The word now is retaliate. Article 5 has not been formally invoked, not yet. Diplomats will argue over wording, over whether the strike was accidental, plausibly deniable, or limited. But the commanders on the ground are not waiting. They cannot. Rzeszów is crippled. Dozens are dead. And Russia's missiles crossed a line that can no longer be ignored. By 0420, NATO surveillance drones are already circling Belarus and western Russia. The targets are clear, the launch sites of the Shaheds and Kalibrs. Mobile trucks hidden in forests, hastily retreating east. Some are still warm from firing. At 0427, Dutch and Polish F-16s receive their new orders. Push east. No longer defending, they cross into hostile skies, hunting the launchers that just scarred NATO soil. AWACS feeds them coordinates. Tankers climb to keep them fueled. What began as a desperate scramble is now an organized strike package. At 0431, the first retaliation lands. A pair of precision-guided bombs streak down on a suspected launcher site in southern Belarus. The explosion lights up the tree line, sending fire and debris into the air. Secondary detonations follow, confirmation that the site was active. NATO has drawn blood. Simultaneously, long-range cruise missiles launch from NATO warships in the Baltic. Their flight paths snake low across the water, invisible until the final dive. Targets: radar stations and ammunition depots supporting Russia's drone campaign. Explosions ripple across Kaliningrad's outskirts. The Kremlin watches in alarm. Their gamble was to demonstrate strength without provoking full-scale war. But now, retaliation is visible, undeniable, and aimed directly at their assets. By 0440, the air war intensifies. Russian S-400 batteries activate, locking onto NATO aircraft near the border. Alarms scream inside cockpits as pilots maneuver violently, dodging potential launches. NATO fighters answer with suppression strikes, firing harms to blind the radars. The frontier becomes a knife fight at supersonic speed. On the ground, Polish soldiers dig in around Rzeszów, expecting another wave. Civilians flee westward, highways clogged with headlights in the pre-dawn gloom. Across Europe, phones buzz with emergency alerts. This is no longer a localized skirmish. It feels like the opening hours of something much larger. At 04:45, NATO jets score their second kill. Another mobile launcher destroyed in Belarus. Flames bloom on the horizon, captured by satellite and broadcast across the alliance. Proof that NATO will not absorb blows in silence. But Russia is not idle. From Kaliningrad, Iskander missile units reposition, their warheads loaded. Strategic bombers warm engines on tarmacs deeper inside Russia. The Kremlin frames the retaliation as aggression, declaring NATO has crossed their red line. The spiral of escalation tightens. Inside NATO command, the mood is grim. Success is undeniable. Launchers destroyed, retaliation achieved. But the risk is greater still. Every bomb dropped on Belarus, every missile that hits Russian soil, pushes the alliance closer to open war. At 04:50, the last fighters return to NATO airspace, their payloads spent. Rzeszów still burns. Ambulances line the runways. Yet in the skies east, smoke rises from destroyed Russian sites. Both sides now count victories. Both sides now count losses. And both know the next move could ignite a war no one can control. By sunrise, the smoke over Rzeszów is visible for miles. Fire crews still battle burning fuel, black columns curling into the pale sky. Craters scar the runway, warehouses lie in ruins, and twisted steel from destroyed trucks litters the ground. Civilians whisper the unthinkable. Poland, a NATO state, has been attacked by Russia. The numbers speak for themselves. 2 warehouses destroyed. 1 runway cratered. Fuel depots incinerated. Dozens killed, over 100 injured. At least 40 Shahed drones and 12 Kalibr missiles intercepted, but not all. On the Russian side, NATO retaliation struck back hard. At least 2 confirmed drone launch sites in Belarus obliterated. Ammunition depots burning near Kaliningrad. Radar installations silenced. The message was clear. Attacks on NATO soil will not go unanswered. But the cost of clarity is danger. Moscow now frames the strikes as Western aggression. Russian media floods the airwaves with images of burning forests in Belarus, calling it proof of NATO's expansion into direct war. Iskander missiles are moved closer to borders. Strategic bombers sit ready on the runways. Escalation, once unthinkable, now feels inevitable. For NATO, the raid is a wake-up call. The assumption that deterrence alone protects European soil is shattered. If swarms of cheap drones and cruise missiles can overwhelm defenses, no base is untouchable. Even with Patriots, AWACS, and modern fighters, sheer numbers nearly broke the system. Defensive doctrine must adapt. Hardened shelters for aircraft, dispersed storage for ammunition, more interceptors, more redundancy, and perhaps most importantly, new ways to counter swarms before they reach their targets. For Russia, the lesson is mixed. The strike demonstrated reach and audacity. It showed that NATO's shield can be pierced, even if only briefly, but it also exposed vulnerabilities. Launch sites are not invisible, retaliations are swift, and NATO, far from fractured, can respond within minutes. In Brussels, diplomats scramble. Some push to invoke Article 5, arguing that the attack on Rzeszów is undeniable proof of war. Others urge caution, fearing full-scale escalation that could spiral into nuclear confrontation. Washington walks the same tightrope, balancing deterrence with restraint. Public opinion, however, is shifting fast. Images of burning NATO soil, of Polish firefighters pulling bodies from rubble, ignite outrage across Europe. Citizens demand answers, demand security, demand strength. The pressure on leaders builds by the hour. In Moscow, the Kremlin declares victory, not in military terms but psychological. They argue NATO blinked, striking only limited targets, unwilling to push further. But beneath the bravado, unease grows. The retaliation was precise, effective, and above all, fast. If this is NATO holding back, what happens if it unleashes its full force? By 07 now, the immediate battle is over. Rzeszów smolders. NATO aircraft patrol nervously overhead. Russia's launchers retreat deeper inland. The world watches, holding its breath. The line has been crossed. The illusion of safety shattered. The war in Ukraine has spilled directly onto NATO soil, and the alliance has answered. Yet the future remains uncertain. Will this night be remembered as a one-off escalation, a warning shot that fades into uneasy stalemate, or as the spark that ignites the largest conflict Europe has seen in generations? The soldiers at Rzeszów, the pilots who fired, the operators who launched retaliations, they already know the answer. For them, war is not a headline. It is the sound of sirens in the night, the glow of burning fuel, the thunder of missiles overhead. And now the question falls to you. If Russia dares to strike NATO again, should the alliance unleash its full strength, even at the risk of global war?